A woman thinks walking away means losing. She thinks if she stops calling, stops begging, stops trying to fix everything, the man will forget her and move on like nothing ever happened. But what many women don't understand is this. Sometimes your absence teaches a man what your presence never could. When you're always available, always forgiving, always chasing, he gets comfortable. He starts believing you'll never leave no matter how little effort he gives. And comfort can make a man blind. Not because he's evil, but because human beings often fail to value what they never fear losing. The moment you finally choose yourself, something changes. Your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. Your distance forces him to sit alone with the consequences of how he treated you. Suddenly, the woman he thought would always wait is no longer waiting. And now his mind starts replaying your voice, your loyalty, your energy, your love. Not because you manipulated him, but because your absence removed the emotional security he depended on. Walking away is not about revenge. It's about self-respect. It's about showing a man that your love is valuable, not unlimited. A strong woman knows when to stop over-explaining herself to someone who keeps misunderstanding her worth. And the truth is, many men only mature emotionally after they experience the loss of a good woman. That's why so many come back. Not because you begged them to, but because when you finally let go, they finally realize what they had. A lot of women spend years trying to convince a man to see their worth. They give more chances than they should, forgive things that hurt them deeply, and keep showing love even when they're emotionally exhausted. They think if they just become more understanding, more patient, more supportive, eventually he will wake up and appreciate everything they've done. But the painful truth is that many men don't fully understand the value of a woman while they still have constant access to her. It's not always because they are heartless. Sometimes it's because human beings naturally become comfortable with what feels permanent. When a woman is always there, always answering the phone, always checking in, always fixing problems, her love slowly becomes something he expects instead of something he treasures. Her kindness turns into routine. Her loyalty becomes normal. And once something becomes normal, people stop paying attention to how valuable it really is. That's why some women feel invisible inside relationships where they are giving their entire heart. They're pouring love into someone who has stopped noticing the emotional effort behind it. A man can get so used to your presence that he forgets how much peace you actually bring into his life. He forgets how your encouragement helped him through hard days. He forgets how your care softened the pressure he carried silently. He forgets how much emotional stability your love created for him. Not because those things were unimportant, but because consistency is often overlooked when it becomes predictable. And this is where many women make the mistake of trying harder instead of stepping back. The more ignored they feel, the more they chase. The more disconnected he becomes, the more energy they invest. They believe love means fighting harder to be seen. But when a man is emotionally comfortable, your extra effort can actually reduce the urgency for him to change. Why? Because he still receives all the benefits of your love without having to grow, reflect, or improve his behavior. That's why walking away changes everything. The moment a woman finally stops overextending herself and removes her energy from the relationship, reality begins to speak to him in a different language. Suddenly, the emotional support he depended on is gone. The attention he took for granted disappears. The comfort of knowing you would always be there no longer exists. And now, for the first time, he feels the weight of your absence instead of the convenience of your presence. Silence has power. Distance has power. Not because they are games, but because absence creates reflection. When you are no longer constantly filling the emotional space around him, he finally has room to notice what life feels like without you. And that's when memories start returning to him in ways he didn't expect. He starts thinking about the little things first. Your voice, your good morning text, the way you listened when nobody else understood him, the way you celebrated his victories, the way you believed in him during moments when he doubted himself. Things he once overlooked suddenly begin to feel rare. And what once felt ordinary now feels impossible to replace. A woman needs to understand something important. Your value does not decrease just because someone failed to appreciate you in the moment. Sometimes people are emotionally immature. Sometimes they are distracted by ego, comfort, or pride. And many men don't truly evaluate what they have until they experience life without it. That's why so many men come back after a woman walks away with dignity. Not because she manipulated him, not because she played games, but because losing consistent love creates emotional clarity. For the first time, he can no longer lean on your energy while giving minimal effort in return. Now he has to face the emotional emptiness he ignored before. And the truth is, many men are not emotionally taught to process loss until it actually happens. While a woman often feels pain during the relationship, a man sometimes feels the deepest pain after the relationship is gone. Women usually notice emotional distance early. They try to communicate. They try to fix things. But men often suppress emotions until the silence finally catches up to them. That's why a man who looked calm when you left may suddenly return months later saying he misses you, thinking about you constantly, or realizing he made a mistake. Time gave him perspective that comfort never allowed him to have. Losing you forced him to measure your importance differently. But women must be careful not to misunderstand this lesson. Walking away should never be about trying to control someone emotionally. It should never be about creating fake distance just to make a man panic. Real power comes when a woman genuinely chooses herself instead of constantly abandoning herself for love. Because the deeper truth is this: when you stop begging to be valued, you start valuing yourself again. And there is something incredibly powerful about a woman who finally understands that her love is a gift, not an obligation. A woman who no longer forces herself into spaces where she is merely tolerated becomes magnetic. Her energy changes, her confidence changes, her standards change, and people begin responding to her differently because she no longer moves from desperation. A healthy relationship should not require you to constantly prove why you deserve respect, effort, or emotional consistency. The right connection should feel mutual. It should feel safe. It should not leave you emotionally starving while you continue feeding someone else. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is stop trying to convince someone to see her worth and simply remove herself from environments where her value is ignored. Because absence has a way of revealing truths that conversations cannot. And many men only recognize the emotional weight of a woman after they experience the silence she leaves behind. The saddest part is that some men learn too late. They return after the woman has already healed, already rebuilt herself, already discovered peace without them. And by then, she is no longer the same woman who once begged for the bare minimum. She has grown stronger, wiser, more protective of her heart. That's why walking away is not weakness. It is self-respect in motion. It is a woman finally realizing that she deserves to be loved fully, appreciated deeply, and valued while she is still present, not only after she's gone. One of the hardest things for a woman to accept is that sometimes the more she chases a man, the less he feels the need to step up emotionally. It sounds unfair because her intentions are pure. She's not chasing because she wants control. She's chasing because she cares, because she believes love should be fought for, because she doesn't want to give up on someone she saw potential in. So she keeps reaching out, keeps explaining herself, keeps trying to repair what keeps breaking. But eventually, she starts carrying the entire emotional weight of the relationship alone. A woman will notice when communication changes. She will feel when the energy becomes colder. She will sense when effort disappears. And because she wants the relationship to survive, she often goes into survival mode. She texts first every time. She initiates difficult conversations. She tries to understand his mood swings. She makes excuses for his distance. Deep down, she hopes that if she keeps loving him consistently, he'll return to the man he used to be. But what she doesn't realize is that constant chasing can accidentally protect a man from accountability. As long as you keep fixing the emotional distance for him, he never has to confront the damage he's causing. As long as you keep reopening the door after every disappointment, disappointment, he never fully feels the consequences of his inconsistency. He becomes comfortable knowing that no matter how emotionally unavailable he becomes, you will still be there trying to make it work. And comfort without accountability can make people emotionally lazy. That's why walking away changes the entire dynamic. The moment a woman stops chasing, the emotional noise disappears. Suddenly, there are no more long paragraphs trying to save the relationship. No more constant reassurance. No more emotional rescue missions. And for the first time, the man is left alone with himself. Silence forces reflection in ways arguments never can. When a woman keeps talking, a man can avoid listening. He can become defensive. He can dismiss her emotions. But when she becomes silent and truly pulls her energy back, he can no longer distract himself from the reality of what's happening. Now he notices the absence. Now he feels the emotional space she once filled so naturally. A lot of men don't fully process emotions in the moment. They process them through absence, through loss, through distance. While a woman may cry during the relationship, many men don't feel the emotional impact until the connection is truly slipping away. That's when their mind finally slows down enough to recognize what they were taking for granted. He begins replaying conversations in his head. He starts remembering the patience you gave him during difficult times. He notices how quiet life feels without your presence. And slowly, the ego that once made him emotionally careless begins to crack. Because now he has to face himself, and that's uncomfortable. He has to ask himself why he stopped trying, why he became emotionally inconsistent, why he gave minimal effort to someone who genuinely loved him. Those are questions he avoided while you were still chasing him because your constant presence gave him emotional security without requiring emotional growth. But once you walk away, the emotional mirror appears. And many men are shocked by what they see in that reflection. They realize they were being loved by someone rare, someone who stayed loyal even when hurt, someone who gave understanding instead of judgment, someone who kept believing in the relationship, even during moments when he stopped investing in it. And when that kind of woman leaves peacefully, it leaves a deep emotional impact because her absence exposes the value of what he lost. This is why a woman must stop thinking that walking away means failure. Sometimes walking away is the only thing that interrupts unhealthy patterns. Sometimes distance is necessary for truth to become visible, not only for him, but for you too. Because while he is being forced to face himself, you are also being forced to rediscover yourself. When you stop chasing someone, you slowly reconnect with your own dignity. Your mind becomes clearer. Your emotions become less chaotic. You begin realizing how much energy you were pouring into someone who kept giving confusion in return. And once that emotional fog lifts, you start understanding that love should not feel like constant emotional labor. A relationship should not require one person to beg for communication, effort, and consistency every single day. Real love meets you halfway. Real love makes you feel emotionally safe instead of emotionally exhausted. And the powerful thing about a woman who stops chasing is this: she becomes calmer, stronger, more grounded. Her confidence no longer depends on whether someone texts her back or chooses her correctly. She begins choosing herself, and that energy changes everything around her. Ironically, that's often when the man returns. Not when she's begging, not when she's crying every night trying to convince him to care, but when she finally detaches emotionally and starts rebuilding her peace. Because now he sees that she is no longer controlled by fear of losing him. And that independence forces him to reevaluate her value. A man may ignore endless availability, but he deeply notices emotional absence, especially when the woman who walked away did it with grace instead of drama. There's something unforgettable about a woman who chooses self-respect over emotional chaos. And whether he comes back or not, the lesson remains powerful. Never chase someone so hard that you abandon yourself in the process. Love should never cost your peace, your confidence, or your dignity. The moment you stop running after people who refuse to meet you halfway, you create space for healthier love, deeper respect, and emotional balance to finally enter your life. Too many women grow up believing that love is proven through sacrifice. They are taught that being a good woman means enduring everything quietly, staying loyal no matter how painful things become, and giving endless chances even when their heart is tired. So when a relationship starts hurting them, instead of stepping back, they often give more of themselves, more patience, more understanding, more forgiveness. They convince themselves that if they just love hard enough, the relationship will eventually heal. But love was never meant to require the destruction of your self-worth. There's a major difference between healthy compromise and emotional self-abandonment. A woman should never have to shrink herself just to keep someone comfortable. Yet many women slowly lose their confidence inside relationships because they become so focused on keeping the man happy that they stop asking themselves whether they are emotionally happy too. And the sad truth is, some men become so accustomed to a woman sacrificing herself that they stop recognizing the emotional cost she is paying to stay. They see her still answering the phone after being hurt, still showing up after being disappointed, still trying after receiving bare minimum effort. Over time, they unconsciously begin believing she will tolerate anything because she loves them deeply. And when a man reaches that level of comfort, respect can quietly begin to fade. That's why self-respect changes everything. A woman who knows her worth carries a completely different energy. She does not scream for attention. She does not beg to be chosen. She does not constantly try to convince someone to treat her correctly. Instead, she understands that her love is valuable. And if someone mishandles it repeatedly, she has the strength to walk away instead of losing herself trying to hold on. And believe it or not, men feel that energy immediately. A man may overlook endless sacrifice, but he notices boundaries. He notices standards. He notices when a woman stops accepting treatment that drains her emotionally. Because self-respect creates emotional weight. It communicates without even saying much, I know what I deserve. There is something deeply attractive about a woman who loves genuinely, but refuses to tolerate inconsistency forever. Not because she is cold or arrogant, but because she values her emotional well-being enough to protect it. That kind of woman becomes unforgettable because she does not operate from desperation. Many women think sacrifice will make a man value them more. But often, constant self-sacrifice without boundaries teaches him the opposite. It teaches him that he can continue giving less while still receiving all your love. That dynamic slowly creates imbalance in the relationship, and imbalance eventually creates resentment. A woman begins feeling emotionally drained because she is constantly pouring from an empty cup. She keeps hoping her loyalty will inspire change, but instead she becomes exhausted trying to earn the kind of treatment that should already come naturally from someone who truly values her. This is why self-respect becomes more powerful than sacrifice. Because a woman who respects herself sets the standard for how others treat her. She teaches people that her heart is not a place where inconsistency can live comfortably. She teaches people that love is not permission to neglect her emotionally. And once a woman understands this, everything changes in her relationships. She stops over-explaining her worth. She stops begging for effort. She stops trying to force emotional maturity out of people who refuse to grow. And instead, she begins choosing peace. That shift is powerful. A man may ignore tears for a while. He may dismiss arguments. He may take forgiveness for granted. But when a woman emotionally detaches after giving her all, he feels the difference immediately. Because now he is dealing with a version of her that no longer revolves around his approval. That's when fear often enters his heart. Not fear because she became toxic. Not fear because she played games. Fear because he realizes she no longer needs him the same way she once did. And when a man man sees that a woman can genuinely move forward without him, he suddenly begins reevaluating her importance. He starts recognizing that her loyalty was rare. Her patience was rare. Her emotional support was rare. And the peace she brought into his life was something he underestimated while he still had easy access to it. A woman who chooses herself after heartbreak becomes incredibly powerful because she stops operating from emotional starvation. She no longer accepts crumbs just because she fears being alone. She understands that loneliness is temporary. But losing yourself inside the wrong relationship can damage your spirit for years. And this is where true healing begins. Not when a man comes back begging. Not when he suddenly realizes your worth after losing you. Healing begins when you realize your value, even if he never does. That realization changes a woman from the inside out. She begins carrying herself differently. Her confidence no longer depends on external validation. She no longer measures her worth by how much attention she receives from someone emotionally inconsistent. Instead, she develops standards rooted in self-love and emotional clarity. And ironically, this version of a woman often becomes more attractive than ever before. Why? Because confidence rooted in self-respect creates emotional magnetism. A peaceful woman who knows her worth radiates strength naturally. She is no longer chasing love out of fear. She is choosing relationships that align with her standards, her peace, and her emotional needs. The most important thing every woman must understand is this: you do not have to suffer endlessly to prove you are worthy of love. Real love should not constantly make you question your value. It should not leave you emotionally drained every night wondering why you are not enough. The right relationship will never require you to abandon your dignity just to keep someone interested. A man who truly values you will not need to lose you in order to appreciate you. And if someone only recognizes your worth after you walk away, let that teach you something important. Your value was always there. They were simply too comfortable to see it. Sometimes the hardest goodbye is the one a woman knows she needs to make. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she finally realized that loving him was slowly destroying her peace. And that kind of realization breaks something deep inside a person. Because women don't usually walk away the first time they get hurt. Most women stay far longer than people realize. They stay through confusion, inconsistency, emotional distance, broken promises, and sleepless nights, hoping things will somehow return to what they used to be. A woman will keep giving chances long after her heart starts feeling tired. She will replay old memories in her mind to convince herself the relationship can still be saved. She will hold on to potential instead of reality because she remembers the version of him that once made her feel special. And that emotional attachment makes walking away incredibly painful. But eventually there comes a moment when exhaustion becomes stronger than attachment. A moment when she realizes she can no longer keep abandoning herself just to hold on to someone who keeps giving her uncertainty. A moment when she understands that constantly fighting for love should not feel like fighting against herself. And once a woman reaches that emotional breaking point, something inside her begins to change permanently. She stops arguing, stops begging, stops trying to force conversations that go nowhere. Not because she no longer cares, but because she is emotionally drained from carrying the relationship alone. And this is what many men fail to understand. A woman usually leaves emotionally before she leaves physically. By the time she truly walks away, she has already spent months battling sadness, disappointment, and confusion inside her own heart. She already cried in private. She already tried to fix things quietly. She already gave more patience than most people would have given. So when she finally chooses herself, it's not impulsive, it's survival. Walking away is not always about punishing a man. Sometimes it's about saving your own mental and emotional health before you completely lose yourself. Because staying too long in a relationship that constantly hurts you can slowly damage your confidence. You start doubting your worth. You start feeling emotionally anxious all the time. You overthink simple things. You become afraid of speaking up because you don't want to push him further away. And without realizing it, you begin shrinking yourself just to maintain the connection. That's why walking away becomes powerful, because it forces a woman to reconnect with herself again. For the first time in a long time, she begins listening to her own needs instead of obsessing over someone else's behavior. She starts realizing how emotionally exhausted she became trying to earn consistency from someone who kept giving mixed signals. Slowly, the fog clears. And in that silence, she begins remembering who she was before the relationship made her question herself so deeply. She starts sleeping peacefully again, starts laughing naturally again, starts feeling emotionally lighter again. And little by little, she begins rebuilding the parts of herself she neglected while trying to save the relationship. This is why healing changes a woman so much, because once she experiences peace after emotional chaos, she becomes far more protective of her heart. She no longer romanticizes struggle the same way. She no longer believes love should constantly feel painful to be real. She learns that healthy love should bring emotional safety, not constant anxiety. And ironically, this is often when the man comes back. Not when she was crying for him, not when she was chasing him desperately, but when she finally detached emotionally and started glowing again. Because men notice energy shifts. They notice when the woman who once centered her entire world around them suddenly becomes emotionally independent. They notice when she no longer waits around hoping for validation. And that confidence creates a different kind of attraction. Now he starts seeing her clearly. He sees the strength he overlooked before. He sees the emotional maturity he took for granted. He sees the peace she brought into his life. And suddenly, the woman he once felt secure about losing no longer feels accessible. That realization can shake a man deeply, because human beings often underestimate things that feel guaranteed. But once access disappears, appreciation begins growing. Now he starts replaying memories differently. The same love he once overlooked suddenly feels rare. The same loyalty he once ignored now feels impossible to replace. But here is the important part every woman must remember. His return should never become the center of your healing. Too many women focus so much on whether the man comes back that they forget the true purpose of walking away. Walking away is not just about losing someone else. It's about finding yourself again, finding your confidence again, finding your standards again, finding your emotional peace again. Because the truth is, some men return without changing. They miss your presence, your comfort, your emotional support, but they still haven't developed the emotional maturity required to love you properly. And a healed woman learns how to recognize the difference between genuine growth and temporary loneliness. That's why healing matters more than reconciliation. A woman who heals no longer accepts apologies without actions. She no longer falls for inconsistent effort disguised as love. She pays attention to patterns instead of promises. And most importantly, she stops seeing loneliness as a reason to settle for emotional instability. There is incredible power in a woman who finally understands her worth. A woman who realizes she can survive heartbreak, rebuild herself, and still love life again becomes unstoppable emotionally. She no longer fears walking away from situations that damage her spirit, because she has already learned that peace is worth more than forced connection. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. Walking away is not losing. Losing yourself trying to hold on to someone who keeps hurting you, that is the real loss. But choosing your dignity, your healing, your emotional stability, and your self-respect, that is where a woman truly begins to win again.